If my dog starts barking, I'll mute myself. I got a wild dog.
Yeah, has been in and out of the room, so you might see him through the virtual background a couple times.
Mine hasn't been up to piss on my carpet for a few hours.
Hello, Comic-Con at Home. My name is Johnny Kolasinski. This is Making a Living Being Creative, where we're going to talk about how you make a living being creative. A little bit about me. I'm a podcaster with 10 years of experience in live arts and arts administration. You can find my podcast where I talk to doctors about what Hollywood gets right and wrong about medicine at hieverybodymd.com. With me today are Lucasfilm licensed artist, Twitch streamer, and creator of Kindergoth, Lee Kohse.
Hi.
A screenwriter, Dan Hageman, who's responsible for things like Lego Ninjago, Guillermo del Toro's Troll Hunters, Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark, and the upcoming Star Trek Prodigy.
Hello, everyone.
And actor John Noble, who many of you know from things like Fringe and Lord of the Rings.
G'day, how are you, mate?
Doing really well. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Thanks, everyone who's watching at home. Hopefully, we'll be able to do something like this in person again really soon. I want to kind of get the conversation started by talking about what it is that got you into working in the arts. And working in a creative field. This is kind of an interesting panel compared to some of the other ones that we've done, because all of you are experts in your field. None of you formally studied it in college and things like that. So let's start with Lee. What was it that led you to decide, okay, this is how I'm going to make my living, is as a visual artist?
It kind of just came down to my family moved around a lot. I think we did something like I had 14 schools in 12 years. So my family didn't really have a lot of money. So we were kind of on the dirt poor side for a bit. And we just moved around. So every 6 months when the rent raised, we moved. I didn't have friends. I didn't actually make any kind of major social connections in school. And so my personal release or way I dealt with a lot of the anxieties and stuff with coming to not learning how to interact with people properly was actually just sketching and drawing on anything I could find. And over time, when as time went on, I just fell in love with cartoons and stuff like that. I decided, I fell in love with cartoons, and I fell in love with comic books, and I fell in love with paintings, and I realized I didn't want to be an animator. I wanted to be a storyteller. And so then I started studying just all aspects of that. And, my mom and my art teacher were the two people who I asked, what can I do with this? And they said, whatever you want. And I believed them instead of the people who were like, you'll never make money doing this. And just kind of fell into it. Just kept doing it until people were like, that's kind of cool. You want to do this thing for us? And I said, yes. And it just kind of snowballed from there.
John, what about you? Is there a specific time where you realized, hey, this is how and why I'm going to make my living as an actor?
There was a specific moment. My background is such that it was the last thing on anyone's mind to do this job, or that you could do it. So we went off and did straight degrees and so forth, and got jobs. But I was doing an elective which involved a little production of Lysistrata. And I was playing a good role, and I was thinking, I love this, and I realised, perhaps not that moment, but that was the first time I can remember really loving what I was doing and knowing that I was really good at it. Bingo! It was like the perfect combination. But I was 25 before that happened. But there was a lot of clowning around before then, and impersonations, but no, that was it. So from then on, it was, let's go and do this thing.
Mm-hmm. And Dan, what about you? Is there a specific moment or realization point?
Yeah, I never sought out to be a writer, but I was always artistic, whether it was like drawing or even for a small stint, claymation. I loved claymation as a child, music. But my plan out of college was to go into advertising, because I thought that was the way to make money and be creative. felt like that was the good yin and the yang. And so writing scripts was just a situation where I lived with my brother and we just started writing scripts because we love movies. We've always grown up loving movies, and we kind of, as we were dabbling with scripts, we got some nice praise early on, and we were like, holy crap, this could actually be something. And then lo and behold, it turned out to be a career. And I've been writing ever since.
And we've talked a little bit before about this, but you didn't originally intend to focus on animation.
Yeah, I mean, when we first started out, we always had big ambitions to do a lot of big Amblin, Spielberg-esque, Chris Columbus-esque movies. I remember when we first came out, this was in the early 2000s. Everybody, most early writers around our peers were trying to be Quentin Tarantino and throwing in violence. And we loved that wish fulfillment and that wonder. And we kind of started creating a name for ourselves of being able to write to both young and old in one script. And it wasn't until the writer's strike hit, where after the writer's strike, it was kind of tough getting jobs. It kind of took away all of our, any gains we had made before that were all wiped clean. And they approached us for a movie called Hotel Transylvania. And at first we weren't really interested because we never really thought about doing animation. But then when we wanted to animate, you know, if we were like, if we're going to do it, let's put our hearts into it. And so, yeah, that led to the Lego movie, and that led to Ninjago. Sort of I wouldn't say elevated, but like something that can have an adult audience as well as a youthful audience.
Mm-hmm. And let's talk a little bit about still sticking earlier in your careers, skill development, because like we discussed, nobody went to school specifically for this here on the panel. But as far as building your toolkit as an artist, as a young artist, what did you rely on, and how did you build those skills? John, do you want to start us off?
Yeah, I was and still am like a sponge, and I watched what was going on, and I was able to discern usually if it was good or if it was bad, and what the BS was involved in it. And I watched and learned and then put into practice, because working in theatre in those early days, you could do that. I played multiple roles in multiple shows. Mm-hmm. Plenty of time for skill development in there. But I also, I had my voice trained, and that I took very, very seriously. And subsequently, I've done some other courses, and I've taught a lot of courses too, at different places. Mm-hmm. But it was observation, and not like a charlatan saying, I know how to do this. I mean, I really wanted to know how to do it. I remember this is an anecdote I don't think I've ever told before, Johnny. But when I was just starting out in the business and started to go to the theatre parties and all that sort of stuff, and all the old theatre men were standing around speaking in accents and doing slabs of Shakespeare, and I didn't know what they were talking about. But then I realised, the trick is they're all doing their Irish or Scottish accent or something or other. I don't know how to do those. But by hell, I made sure I did. And then I made an absolute study of it to the extent where I was not so much longer after that I was teaching accents. But it came out of that chuckle. What these real theatre people are doing. And also just the slabs of, prose they could pull off. No, which meant something to them. Good as fun. Yes.
Lee, what about you? How did you really grow your skills as a visual artist early on?
It mostly started out with going through books, archaic technology they used to have back in the day. But I would just, I would see artwork in books and be like, oh, how'd they do that? And then I would just try to research. I'd find out what I could about the artist, what mediums did he use, what size was the piece. And if I could, sometimes I'd even talk to the artist. I would try to find them at like a convention, or if there was an address in the back of the book or something like that, I would reach out to people and say, this is really cool. How did you do this? And a lot of times they'd call me or they'd send me an email or something back later on and say, oh yeah, it was just kind of, oils did this, check out these books or these techniques. And then I go study that stuff. So it was just constantly being curious about how things were done of the stuff that appealed to me. And then it got to a point where I had built a fundamental skill set that was strong enough that it occurred to me one day when somebody came up and said, hey, can you do this? I actually told them no. And then the guy next to me said, yes, you can. You already have these skill sets. All you need to do is figure out a way to do them in a different way. And so then it kind of became, then the next time somebody came up and asked me, I won't say which publisher it was, but a publisher came up and said, hey, can you do body painting? And I was like, okay, I know how to use an airbrush. I know how to illustrate. I can freehand draw. I understand 3D forms and human anatomy. So I said, yes. Then all I had to do was figure out that instead of using the type of paint I was using in my airbrush, I just had to go use cosmetic grade stuff and then figure out whether the safety precautions and stuff for body painting versus, painting on a canvas or something, because it's essentially just a 3-dimensional canvas. So you just take the fundamentals you've already established and apply them. And then later on, somebody said, hey, can you weather props? It's like, well, I could body paint. So that's kind of the same skill set. So I said, yes. And so it really does come down to just saying yes, and then fine tuning your skill sets to do that next project. And so it's made me a very diverse artist.
Dan, what about you as far as building out those skills early on?
I mean, early on, we were hungry for scripts. It was hard to find scripts, but not just any script. We'd find the scripts of movies we would love and early drafts. And that was a big game changer because, we would think of that movie like The Goonies. We're like, this is like, in our opinion, a perfect movie. And then we would read an early draft and there's like scenes in it where there's like a gorilla riding a golf cart or like them fighting a squid and making it dance away to a Cyndi Lauper song. And we were like, there's horrible moments in this script. And when we were like, we can write horrible moments, it felt like the gods were mortal. And that allowed us to give us a little confidence of like, we can try to do that. We could try to write a really bad scene. And
it became comedy and the rest is history.
And when is it that you made the decision to move to LA?
I moved to LA. I knew I was going to live with my brother, who was my writing partner, and he was 3 years older. He went to film school. And I moved down to LA. I got a job in advertising. And that's, I think it was about year 2000. And that's when, what young 20-year-olds do in an apartment. We're like, we're not hanging out at the bars. We were hanging out Friday nights writing a script. And it was some of the most fun time of our lives, just sitting there and trying to make up a movie in our heads and putting it on the page and making it read the way we wanted it to be read.
John, you worked in theater for quite a while before you made the transition to TV and film.
Yes,
what kind of inspired that change?
It was a logical change. Although I started late, I really did accelerate very fast in terms of success. I was running a company not that many years later. I directed on the West End, and there were things were looking really, really strong. And I think, in a sense, I thought, well, I want to try something new, film and television. I'd done some, and the South Australian Film Corporation used to let me come in on their projects, so I learned about making films. But that was the reason. And then, of course, to shift to the big smoke, Sydney, where no one knew me because there are no theatre actors down there. And so I had to sort of start at the bottom doing cattle calls and all that sort of stuff. Very, very good for the ego. But I'm glad it happened because it really did ground me against my acceleration up had been so fast. Down again. And it broke through. The first international was Lord of the Rings. There's no question about that. Just huge break in terms of sort of being people wanting you here. That's the difference. Thousands of people want to come here. So that happened, and it's been a pretty good run since that time. Some funny ones, though, speaking back then. Once I was my agent at the time, I'd only just here. I don't even know if I'd moved here. Anyway, I said, can you go and do an audition. There's a film being made in Prague, and they need someone to do a few scenes who can do the big Russian accent. Can you do that? I said, oh yeah. And I didn't know it, but by applying the principles that I apply as a teacher, I was able to go in there and win the role. I actually got another one as a Russian as well. So that's accents, you know, and some of them we think we can take for granted, and we can't. You know, the Irish is one that's screwed up pretty regularly, and there's so many British ones. Anyway, enough of that. But, just a little story.
I do like. I was gonna say I like how there is like you were just saying, they're bluffing your way through it. It's that parallel kind of with me and people coming up going, "Can you do this?" Yeah, I can do that. And then you go, you already know you're a sponge. You already know what you have faith in what your base abilities are. So you just go find a new way to apply them, and it works.
That's true.
So I love the parallel in what you just described is exactly what I just described about the body painting. Does Dan have one as well? It'd be kind of cool to see the.
Yeah, no, I remember the panic, like when we got our first job, which was a miracle. And the first thought was, oh God, we got to actually know how to write a script. Even though we had written scripts, I was like, yeah, but this is professional. And so I went out and like bought all these books, and I'm reading them, and like, every time I'm like, we're crossing the threshold, Kevin, we got to write the scene where they're crossing the threshold. And like, I was learning, like trying to figure out I was like trying to backwards learn how to be a screenwriter as I was writing
it.
Can you write a play? Well, I know English.
Read that book after you without becoming writers, mate. Millions of people read all those books, and you're the one that survived to become a writer. And
I will say, it was like my brother and I were very fortunate in our way to break in. Our very first pitch was to Steven Spielberg, and that was our first job. And so this is why I was very stressed. I was like, oh my God, we're writing for Steven Spielberg. I gotta look like I know what I'm doing. Hurry, Kevin.
That's extraordinary.
Yeah, it was a good pressure cooker.
Yes.
How do you handle critiques and criticism? That's kind of something, especially as the internet, the internet culture is there. And if somebody doesn't like something you're doing, they'll probably tell you about it, especially early on. How did you learn to recognize what's a valid criticism and constructive, and what is just somebody trying to tear you down? Let's start with Lee for this one.
Like in the beginning, I would post stuff up on forums. Like there's an art forum called Sejun that a bunch of professional artists would hang out on, and they would upload artwork, but amateurs could also upload their stuff there and get opinions. And so I was doing that. And I was super enthusiastic about it. And there's some amazing, professionals that were actually giving feedback on that. And I was enjoying that. But periodically you'd get this, it's like, you suck, you can't draw. I think I remember one time the guy would actually told me, you can't draw knees. It's like, you're horrible at drawing knees. You can't do this. They look like they're bent backwards and And I'm sitting there going through like my Bridgman anatomy books, and I go and like Bernhard go with dynamic anatomy books. I'm going through everything going, I followed the instructions. I did just like they said. I'm looking at, I'm having my girlfriend at the time was like, okay, bend your knee. Okay, sketching it. It looks fine. What is he talking
about? I would love
it.
We can't see you on Zoom, but I would love it if you had really weird looking knees. And like
giant knobby like troll shaped knees. But yeah, it was but that was the thing, is I was just like, what is wrong with my knees? And then finally one day, this guy was giving me a panic attack, and granted, I've also received bad reviews elsewhere from people like, oh, you suck, this is horrible, don't give up your day job type stuff. But this one guy, because he was specific, and I was like, okay, he's got to know what he's talking about. So finally I went to his page and I looked up his profile, and then I found his website and I looked him up, and I was like, this guy can't even draw. Like, who is he to tell me I suck when he's like an accountant, and so it's like, he doesn't have it's kind of, I discovered that there are people out there who are more than happy to give you their opinion. But as a creative, you sort of have to decide, is that you literally have to decide, does that person's opinion matter? And if somebody who is not somebody I respect, or if somebody who is not a peer or somebody who's not in that chain of who's going to hire me gives me super hypercritical criticism and stuff like that, then I'm probably just going to be like, you know, no problem. You know, thanks for the feedback, but I'm not going to let it get to me, because I did that one time and it hurt me because I was trying to solve a problem that I found out later didn't exist. You know, it's almost like having somebody say you're using too much green and then finding out they're colorblind, you know, or you're not using enough green or something. And it really does, you know, so now it's like, I'll listen to art directors, I listen to peers, and I do listen to the audience in general when I'm kind of like, what do you guys think? Because I want a general appeal from the audience. Like, I love that feedback, but that specific grueling, you're doing art wrong, I'm only going to take that feedback from people who know what they're talking about and just blow everybody else off, kind of.
I would say for criticism, I mean, as a writer, when you're young, your first instinct is like, when someone says something's wrong, you're like, well, what about the other 10,000 words that I wrote? Like, are those right? Like, you're automatically defensive. And I would say, like, it's taken me many years. My brother would tell me I probably still haven't learned how to take criticism. But I think the thing that we've gleaned a little bit is that there's always an itch to scratch. Like, you know, we're getting notes from executives and things like that. So outside of what Lee's talking about, if some outside person critiquing you, yeah, ignore those. But like, if there's someone who's trying to help get a project across the line, you know, don't view them as an enemy, view them as an ally, or they're trying to help you make it better. But sometimes their note, you know, could be a wrong approach, or as a writer, you're like, well, that would unhinge everything. But what you have to look at is like, what's the itch to scratch? What are they trying to get at? What are they trying to say? They're trying to help you, even though you feel like you're being attacked. As an artist, they're trying to help you. And so the quicker you can get to figuring out what the itch to scratch is, the quicker you'll be able to find something that makes it a better product.
Well, can I tell you a story?
Of course,
please.
You know that a lot of us do the cameo appearances and so forth, do a lot of them, and it's good fun. And I always try to get them done. But on this particular occasion, we were actually, Penny and I were in the middle of Australia, and the internet was out at all the storms that happened. Couldn't get through, and I'm panicking. About 5 of them lined up. And yeah, finally, I don't know what time of the morning it was, and I'd found a light somewhere. And I'm doing this thing for this woman. It's free. And she wrote me the most stinging review. And I don't get that really. So I went back and I looked at it and I said, oh, yeah, I suppose if you're looking at it from a certain point of view, so I wrote to her and said, you know, I think you're right. And thanks for that sort of thing. She, don't you dare come back to me like that. That was it. Just said, yeah, you're right, mate. Just most of the time it's the stuff on social media is there's a lot of trolling, and I don't actually look at it very much. I'll say there's certain things I do look at, and by choice. It can hurt, even if it's out of, you know. I remember one fellow when we first opened Lord of the Rings, he said, "This noble, he cannot act." By Dr. Hitzwan, something or other. But in all the good ones, that was his thought. And I thought, well, now it wouldn't worry me.
Do you ever get that fear of imposter syndrome? Because I know as an artist, I get that. Like, it's like, I'm not good enough to be here. Like, you're surrounded by your idols or people you really respect, and you're like, what the hell am I doing here?
Well, and you're as old as me. I hope you've got it, because I don't feel that now, but I know exactly what you're talking about. And when I'm giving certain lectures, talk about the imposter syndrome. It's very powerful, and it exists in all of us, believe. So it's just one of those things we deal with. It's probably a good balancing thing, really. Just keep yourself up to scratch here. Make sure your skills are up to scratch, and you can never back off for a minute. You can't back off. You just can't. It's got to be full bore. So
I feel like the imposter syndrome for a writer is through the writing process. It's not like when you're done with it. It's like you're beating yourself up over every word. So when you finally get done and someone critiques you, you're just like, like I've already been hard on myself. Like, no, this is the way. It's like, so if anything, I'm almost too locked in on feeling like this is good. Although that's another danger, but it's like, I'm too biased. I'm like, I need sometimes you get your head's too much into the work and you feel like you have blinders on, and it's just as dangerous, where someone's trying to help you and you don't accept the help because you feel like they're an idiot, and you're like, no, you're the idiot.
Yeah. It can cripple. The thing is, it can cripple you. The imposters, any of these things, or fear of criticism, they can cripple you, and they have stopped many people. Just can't do it. Can't stand the criticism, but we've had to learn to put it in its place. And what you're suggesting is you look for the positive in it, and so do I. And sometimes there is some, and the rest of it, I've got to the stage now. That piece of advice about standing up stage left really doesn't, not necessarily anymore. I don't say that, but there is sometimes there's some terrific stuff, and just if it, you can always sense the spirit in which it's written or said to, that it's not done to put you down. It's there as a considered opinion, and then you take it very seriously. If it's just a flat about the whole thing, this is crap, or that doesn't mean so much.
Dan, your nature of work is, like, by definition, because you're working with your brother, it's collaborative. Obviously what you're looking for in a collaborator from your brother is this guy my brother, but in general, what is it that you're looking for in someone that you want to work with, either in the writing room or somebody that you want to work with, as a producer or director or something like that? What are you looking for in collaborators?
There's so many different types of collaborators. Like in the writer's room, a diverse voice, like someone who's able to, I don't want a clone. I want someone to bring in new ideas, because it's like, that's where magic happens. And when you think you know something and someone says, well, what if this happens? You're like, ooh, that's interesting. Because I always feel like the secret sauce in screenwriting is surprise. It's turning a page and going, ooh, this is interesting. This is a betrayal. I never saw this coming. And so that's what collaboration is great for, is to get you out of that, a different perspective. In terms of my brother, I think we have similar tastes. So we need to be able to call each other out where we go, I know you want this scene to be this way, but it's not coming across this way. Because oftentimes you're like, no, you're reading it. It's in your head. This is the way it is. And you're like, dude, I'm reading it and it reads flat. So you need people to call you out on your bullshit, so to speak. So that's an important in a collaborator, and it should be a voice that you respect, a voice that you feel like they do good work, and it's coming from a place of trying to make the project better, and with great collaboration, the project always is better.
John, is there something that you look for either in actors that you're working with, or if you're working with a director that you really appreciate or really like to see?
This is the cliche, Johnny, but I can walk onto a set and I'll find an actor that is truthful. There's the cliche right there. That is truthful. That is truthfully there to do what she or he is there to do. Who is collaborative in the sense that to do it together makes sense. And that form of collaboration is priceless to me, and working with good actors. I went onto the set of The Good Doctor, and the lady that was the lead in that, marvelous, wonderful actress anyway, The Good Doctor, the show. She just accepted me with open arms. We just talked straight away, collaborated, and then we created something which is really good. But you know what? Actors hate being told what to do by other actors. And that's, giving someone a reading or something is deadly. They won't listen to you, but they'll also resent you. So you've got to find ways, even as a director, you find ways of turning around the other way rather than saying that was crap. You'll find a way that could have worked, whatever it would be. People don't like that sort of thing. They like to be involved. They like to think it's a talk between the two of you. It's not just you and that's it.
Lee, I mean, a lot of your work tends to be more solo, but you also, depending if you're working on a contract or if you're working on something like a comic book or something like that, that point in time, you do have folks that you're working alongside. How does your workflow change when you got somebody else there?
It pretty much always depends on every project. So I kind of grew up in, like, my professional careers. has been moving in and out. I've got, obviously I do the Lucasfilm Disney stuff, is one of my biggest clients, and other ones as well. But I've kind of bounced around a lot with like startups. So with a lot of like small startup projects and companies and things, and whether they're publishers or technological or whatever, they were all pretty much almost every professional company I've worked with, other than really big Fortune 5 companies, have been startups. I don't really have a middle ground. So in those startup environments, everybody has to wear different hats, and everybody has to be able to switch roles on the fly and pivot on the fly, depending on the needs of the project and what the ultimate goal is. So in the case of Speed Racer, I was the creative director. And so I put together this team with Robbie Musso and Tommy Yoon and James Rochelle. And that was probably my favorite project I've ever worked on in a collaborative environment. Mostly for me, it was working with Tommy. And that was because the way he and I worked is Tommy wrote Speed Racer, but he was also an artist for Speed Racer like 10 years before. So when I was doing art for Speed Racer, we would switch roles. I would have him art direct me, and then, or creative direct me. And then while he was doing his stuff, I was his creative director. And so, but we could just pivot back and forth, like in the same conversation. Kind of like, because you always have that kind of like the chain of command thing, but it would literally just flip on the fly based on what the goal of what we were trying to achieve at that moment was. And I love working with people where you can do that, where there's no ego involved. There's nothing. It's just, how do we put the best product forward? How do we entertain the most number of people? How do we make the fans happy? And can we put out something that just blows their mind and is really cool? And that's the goal. That's the target. We're not here to make one person look better than the other, or, or outshine somebody. We just want to put together the single best project we can. And so, that kind of in-depth collaboration I really love. And unfortunately, working solo as a freelancer like I do, I don't get it often. So the few times I get it, I'm just, it's like a really fine dish. You don't want to work really fast. You kind of want to just, we finished the project. Is there something else we can do? That was so much fun. I want to savor more. So
I want to talk a little bit about, as your careers have progressed, early on, you're probably going to want to say yes to most of the offers that come to you. But as you get a little bit farther in your career, there's going to be things you want to turn down. How do you recognize what's worth saying no to, and how do you address that? John, do you want to start with that?
Absolutely. One thing I've noticed about myself is that if I have a gut feeling against something, but I allow myself to be convinced to do it for pragmatic reasons, and this has happened several times, that every time it's been bad. Every time has been bad, whether it's casting a certain person or quite often is that, it's the decision to, or will you direct this play? Oh, no. Yeah, I will. No, it's a rotten play. You knew it was a rotten play. So it's that voice is pretty powerful in me, and it'll tell me, and it has on shows, that Sean, just would you go and see it, mate? No, I wouldn't. No, I didn't want to do it. But as a youngster, and this is what you made, when you're coming out, anything that comes along is gold. We used to love getting commercials in those days, where I came from, because it'd be this slab of money when there was nothing else. It's great. And then people would recognise the merch from the commercials. That's weird. Yeah, that's all.
I love the analogy, just slab of money.
The slab.
Build a house right there on that slab.
Yeah.
I think for we've been lucky to say no to a lot of stuff, but I think we've said no to everything that we were working on. Like, I can't think of anything. Star Trek, there's always been some moment where, even for like the Lego movie, I remember like Dan Lin said, I've got 3 projects, potentially. It was like Lego movie, Tom and Jerry, and Flash Gordon. We're like, oh, Flash Gordon, so it's like, again, then we were saying no to that. for Star Trek, we felt like, oh my gosh, this is like, wow, that's a big one. I don't know, like I don't think we can do it. But there's always a moment when after you've told yourself no, you're like, but wait a minute, what if we do this? And like when I talk to my brother and I have those conversations, we start like the wheels start spinning. You're like, oh yeah, it'd be really cool if you did this with the Lego movie, or it'd be really cool if you did this with Star Trek. And then you get excited. And when you get excited, you're pregnant. And you're like, I gotta do this. So that's usually the process.
Lee,
I like the analogy of being pregnant, because then it's like, and now you got to push it out.
Yeah, it's very apt. Yeah.
For me, there's kind of two criteria. Early on in my career, the stuff I said no to was pretty much only stuff that compromised me. So if it was a project I wasn't comfortable with the subject matter, or I was doing pinup art for several magazines, and one of them sent me a project saying, we want you to do full nudes or something. And this company also did some fairly explicit stuff. So I talked to my friend Joel about where does he kind of draw the line and stuff like this. And he's like, I just told my publisher I won't draw genitals. And that totally kept him out of any of the more explicit categories. And I was like, that's a good idea. So I did that. And granted, I obviously didn't get as many projects from that client as I would have, but I was very happy that I made that decision, because I was happy with the art I put out. Even to this day, I still like the art that I put out at that time, because it was, it was tasteful. I like cheesecakey kind of fun stuff, and it seemed fun and cheesecakey. And then the criteria I started putting on stuff after that sort of became, do I have the time, and, will it bring me joy? And unfortunately, I will admit the do I have the time to do it is sometimes superseded by will it bring me joy? Because there's been a lot of projects I've said yes to that I didn't have time to work on, but it's like, okay, well, I can stop eating or I can stop sleeping. Yeah, both of those will have to go. Yes, I'll do the project. And then I'll go and do the project. And, then my wife's like, I haven't seen you in a week and you're an absolute wreck. What the hell's going on? It's like, oh, I just did a Transformers thing, because I'd never worked on Transformers. I took the project. So good example, I guess.
Wow.
So we kind of had a preliminary conversation on this, and I'll tell people where to find it as we wrap things up. But one thing we didn't really cover much in that one was networking, and we got a lot of questions about that. What do you think of as networking, and what's its effect really been on your career, positive or negative? Dan, do you want to start us off on this one?
Yeah, I don't think we did any networking early on. I mean, our networking was trying to write the best goddamn script we could write and get that out. But I think like now with Twitter and things like that, like even today, like I love someone's storyboards. I'm like, hey, are you available? It's getting your work out there on Twitter. I guess people also Instagram, but we're not really on Instagram, but like, it's so much wide open. It's so wide open now to be, that you can get your works in front of people who are making decisions. I guess that would be the best way to network now.
John, any thoughts on networking and things like that?
I was always told that I was not good at it when I ran the theatre company. When I ran the theatre company, the board members would say, John, you've got to be out there and network. And I'd say, but we're doing well. I don't want to do that. Going through. So I wasn't that good at it at that stage. I haven't found the need to do it in the States at all, or other areas. So it happens. I think it happens. What I've noticed it happens in film and television, it's by word of mouth. So if someone's thinking of employing you, they'll make a call. They'll ask someone. I remember J.J. Abrams' father speaking to me at the opening night of that show, of Fringe, and he said, J.J. rang me about you. Really? Because he was a producer and I'd done something called the Natalie Wood story with him in Australia. Now, that's bizarre, but that happens a bit. And also, directors, actors will ring each other too. Just see what it's like to work with their. Yeah, we do that. If that's networking, there it is.
Lee?
Networking for me is really like I'm kind of like with John. I'm not good at it. I mean, I like the Lucasfilm job came as a direct result of networking, but I didn't do anything. It was literally I did art. My first big project was Lord of the Rings, you know, and then the people I worked with on Lord of the Rings all went off on their different things after the third movie. And then I went to go work at DreamWorks on some Shrek licensing stuff. And then somebody's like, oh, one of the guys from Lord of the Rings went to go work at DreamWorks on another project. And they were like, hey, go get this guy, you know, because he also can do the style of art we want. And, you know, just like through these weird networking connections that I had no influence or anything in, I ended up actually working on Indiana Jones, which then led to Star Wars. And I've kind of been there ever since because I'm very happy. And then, but as far as like my professional networking, I really suck at it. I had one of my friends come up to me one time saying, I'm looking for a designer and a really good artist. Do you know any? And I said, I think I know a guy over there. And I didn't realize he was trying to hire me. And I just referred him to somebody else. And it happened, you know, years later, somebody else came up. It's like, you know, I was thinking, you know, it's like, I need an artist to design spaceships. And I was like, oh, have you seen Jeff Zugale? He does this project called Spaceship a Day. The guy, all he does is spaceships. He's brilliant. And so I would always deflect it to somebody else. And then one time I was just like, I really want to work on Wolverine or do something like this. And one of my friends pointed out, it's like, dude, you're co-writing like independent underground books and stuff with Len Wein. I'm like, yeah, he's great to work with. Like he created Wolverine. Like, why not just ask him? And it never occurred to me to do that. And then of course, unfortunately, Len passed away a few years ago. So when I finally decided I should have done that, you know, obviously the time had passed. And then it's also like I was hanging out with Paul Levitz and, you know, Harlan Ellison and all these other legends in the field while I was hanging out with Len. And it never occurred to me once to go, does anybody have a project? Are you looking for an artist or, you know, anything? And, you know, I'd really love to do Swamp Thing, something. And it never occurred to me to do that until kind of it's too late. So I'm the guy who comes up with the really good punchline 2 a.m. after the bar's closed. And you're like, oh, that would have been a good comeback. You know,
there's like a French term for that. That's like the realization in the shower or something along those
pretty
lines.
Much. And you're like, oh, that would have been brilliant. But that was me when it comes to networking.
Like Schadenfreude, there should be a German word for that.
There should. Like standing by the hedge. But yeah, it's so I'm not that good at networking, and it's only with the pandemic that I've kind of made the concerted effort. I've started writing things down. I want to do this. I mean, even a good example right here on this panel, which didn't occur to me until earlier this week. We've talked about it repeatedly and stuff like that, but John and I like created a little cartoon character dude together. And I've got like a whole plot line for like a little storybook for a kid thing. And I'm sitting there like, at what point is it polite versus, you know, rude or professional to actually go? And this is the thing I always have anxiety over is, would it be out of place to go, let's go, like, would you be up to finishing this? Let's do this and make a book out of it and get it out there and see if it entertains people. And
we've got to do that, Lee. We've got to do that. I know it's been bloody years it's been going on.
I'm game.
Yeah, me too.
So there, I've networked for the first time successfully in my professional career.
And we got it on tape.
Live on camera. But yeah, so I'm horrible at it. I accidentally network more than I actually successfully network.
I feel like that's a lot of people who are successful at networking also don't think they're good at it. Because I'm just in it because a lot of it is just being a nice guy and not building a reputation, nice person, and not building a reputation as somebody who's a jerk or horrible to work with.
That's a big lesson. I remember hearing like I remember it was around 7 years of us working as writers and nothing had been made. And I read this statistic that most writers quit after 7 years. I was like, oh, shit. And they either burn out or they burn all their bridges. It's like one or the other. And I'm like, I'm close to burning a lot of bridges. And so, and a lot of it is you're right. It's like half the job is just being a nice person or being someone that they want to work with. Like you may not have all the answers, but if they want to work with you, they'll give you the time to find those answers, whereas if you're trying to force it and you're going, no, it's like, they're like, I don't want to work with someone difficult. There's not enough time in this world to work with difficult people.
Neil Gaiman did a really cool commencement address in like 2011 or 2012, talking about kind of like the good, fast, cheap, pick two. If you do excellent work, if you turn it in on time, or if you're a joy to work with, as long as you're two of those things, then people will want to work with you. Like,
I remember Guillermo del Toro was like, if you're crazy, you better be really fucking good.
People often talk about people in creative careers not having a real job or not doing serious work. Sorry, there's my dog. About not doing creative jobs aren't real jobs. Is that something that you've had to encounter, and when did it stop, or did it stop?
It was a pervasive thing. I mean, I was at country in 1950s Australia, No, it was, it's very nice, and you have the odd concerts and stuff and watch the films, but no, it wasn't something that was part of our life at all. Even though people did it. People still had their dance classes and they did it, but it wasn't part of our life. It wasn't like, oh, I'm going to take the kids to gym, then I'm going to take them to dance school, and nothing like that. Go to football training, son, I'd say.
I think I can look back at my parents, and like there was a fear of like, they knew we were artistic and we had these ambitions, but they don't want to see us fail, So I think it's like are you really sure you want to try to make a living being creative? That seems like a road of pain. And the thing is, it's like, if you love what you do, you enjoy that road of pain. You're like, this is what I like, so.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, I think it's also with that, if you enjoy what you do, you also, like the whole thing of like, if you love what you do, you never work a day in your life. It holds, because I will work sometimes, 16, 20 hours in a day. And I will do this sometimes for a week or two straight and have no regrets, as long as I love the project I'm working on. And usually those projects where that happens, it's usually a personal project, or it's a painting, or it's an idea I'm trying to execute and get across on my own. And I'll do it. And I actually have to have my family periodically go, we miss you. And it's like, oh yeah, let's go watch some episodes of Archer or Robot Chicken or something for dinner.
Yeah, I remember when I was 18, I worked in a shit factory. I worked at a sewer treatment plant, shoveling rocks to move it from point A to like point B. I'm like, that shit was work. That was work. That was like, And I remember the construction guys would be like, stay in school. I'm like, I got it. I'm learning.
We're kind of getting to the point where if we were actually at the convention center, there'd be somebody holding up a sign telling me to wrap things up. So kind of want to get to our last couple questions here. This is a good one that came in after we had our earlier conversation that I really liked. What are some hidden skills that you think make the difference between an average creator and someone who has the potential to be at the top of their class or top of their field? Are there like hidden ninja skills, either creative or not, that kind of separate the wheat from the chaff there?
That's tough, because I mean, I would think those skills would be different for every person. Like, I think I can, no matter how hard things get, I like to have a sense of humor. And I think that's a big skill of like, when things are getting really tough in the writer's room, there has to be a sense of joy of saying, yeah, this is a slog, but let's look at the bright side. We're writing a TV show. Let's, being able to balance yourself. I think that's a big thing.
Yeah, look, the thing that I perhaps have noticed is that as much performing as a teaching, is that that person that shows incredible concentration and that is prepared to take risks. In other words, just doesn't take the straight line, gives you something else to go. And there's a lot of famous anecdotes about people doing that. That's a thrill, unless it's a stupid, absolute ludicrous, puerile thing. But if they try something, it doesn't have to work. It doesn't have to work. It's just, I'm thinking as a teacher, obviously, or working with an actor, and they'll flick you something that you hadn't rehearsed. You go, yeah, thank you. I'll drop a name. I worked with Al Pacino 2 years ago, and he's an improviser. And he would throw stuff. Yeah, he would throw stuff at me, and I'd oh shit, let's go for this. And we'd basically improvise the scene. But that's him. He just stay on if you want to go to the right.
I want to change my answer and double what John said. Risk. People who are willing to take risks.
You could say work with Al Pacino.
The risk aspect, that's massive, because I think you'll see a lot of writers who are trying to play it safe, who are trying to please others. And if you're willing to please yourself and take risks and do something, that's massive. It really comes down to an original voice.
Yep.
I'm kind of thinking like it's kind of like, for me as an artist, I kind of go, like, I sort of want to go back to kind of what John said in the very beginning, is be a sponge. I know that there's some artists out there that I love and adore, and at one point they were just cranking out art, and they were overwhelmed with all the projects and stuff they had to do. So all they could do was what they know, what there was in their comfort zone. And it was when I watched that, I realized that, watching their art improve, comfort zone. And suddenly their art stopped improving. They were cranking stuff out left and right, but it wasn't any more stellar than anything else that they had done. And it sort of became, I don't want to say blasé, but it just didn't have, it plateaued. It wasn't really pushing the envelope like they used to. Then they disappeared for a year or two, came back, and suddenly their art is just amazing, and it's mind-blowingly good again, because they stopped working on so many projects that they were weighted down, and they were able to actually take an amount of time to soak up new influences, to basically study and practice new things. As an artist, I'm constantly, it goes back to the very beginning, we were talking about opening up a book, talking to another artist. How did you do that? Show me. And then I'll go practice it, and I'll keep doing it and doing it and doing it. And then one of these days I will crank out a piece, and whatever my brain, whatever stuck when I, was working on this technique, whatever got stuck in my brain just came out in that artwork. And so suddenly it's all like, oh, I can see that little bit of influence from my buddy. It's like, that's something he taught me. And I think that's really that ninja skill you're talking about is basically be a sponge. It's, if you keep pushing yourself, and that also goes to take risks as well, because you have to, essentially it's the equivalent of stepping out of your comfort zone. You have to be uncomfortable and then deal with it, and you become better. But if you're always just being comfortable, you'll never get better.
And it goes back to, like, I swear, the secret sauce, surprise, like whatever your craft. I feel like if you can surprise yourself, you're going to surprise the audience. You're going to.
Isn't it amazing? Yeah, it is true.
Yeah. You want people on their heels going, what's going on? I don't know. I don't know where we're going. I don't know. That's the bread and butter.
It is.
All right. And kind of time to wrap things up. So one last question. If you could give one career message to yourself at 20 or at the beginning of your career, other than, buy Amazon, buy Apple, buy Bitcoin, is there anything in particular that you would tell yourself when you were starting out?
I mean, I would say something that I tell a lot of young writers is that I feel like the ingredients to success are passion and persistence. And it's a long game, and you think you're going to get kicked out, and you think you're going to question yourself. But if you just stay at it and you stay on course and you believe in yourself, you have that passion, it's going to crack open.
I've gotten a lot of really bad advice over the years. So, like, part of me almost like I'm torn on this question, because I almost want to tell myself, if you really feel this in your heart, do it. But I've also gotten some great advice over the years that was amazing. And then there was a couple of things where, had I actually done it my way or the way I wanted to, or accepted the contract or the project I wanted to, my career would have advanced tenfold, kind of stuff. So so I'm sort of torn on that, because it's, I almost want to say, choose your friends wisely. and who, and or even better yet, vet the people you're taking advice from better.
Can those people draw knees?
Yeah. Well, I'm not even thinking that. I'm thinking like we talked conversation previous about agents and stuff like that. And, I had an agency come up to me, and I had never spoken to an agency. I wasn't looking for an agent. There was nothing there, but I had a comic book that was successful, and they came up and said, we would like to represent you. I went to somebody, I was told by somebody else, you really should respect this person's opinion. And that person said, no, our company will represent you. You'll be fine. And then that company folded, and the other company was like William Morris Agency. And I didn't know that that's like the cream of the crop. I should have just said, nah, I should have done my research and checked, rather than just taking somebody's blind opinion. Or not blind opinion, but it was a business decision on the part of that company. But I should have said no to him, yes to them. And because agencies don't generally just come up and offer you an opportunity like that. And I did not know that at the time. I thought because I had 3 or 4 agencies just throwing business cards and let's meet, let's have coffee, let's do this, let's go out for lobster. And I just thought that's how it happened. Because it was happening so often. And then I discovered, no, that was just, it was a moment in time. And I let it go by because I was naive about it. And I trusted somebody that I was told I should trust. And then when I did background later, I realized, oh, maybe I shouldn't have trusted that person actually.
John, anything you would tell to 20-year-old John Noble?
Well, sad to admit, 20-year-old John Noble didn't have a clue about creative life, and I didn't for a number of years to come. I don't know, mate. It just took me. I mean, the whole thing, my whole life, my career, has taken me, and I don't know how much say I've had in that. I'm not being woo-woo there. It's just, taking certain bends in the road, and then aggressively, as soon as they're there, I attack them. I don't sit back and wait. But I was so interested in the early statements here, where people were talking about what they thought they could do when they were teenagers with their creative ability. And I thought, oh God, do people really still think about that when they're teenagers? I just had no idea of what they're talking about. So it's been amazing sharing the panel with these two wonderful fellas. I don't mean to denigrate it or lay back and say it was easy. It was not easy. The thing that, and I think Dan might have said this, the thing that's important is to have passion. I had it. To have persistence. I had, and I've still got both of those. This is what this industry does to me. That's a good thing. So no, I couldn't have got any advice except how to bowl a better in-swinger for a cricketer, you know what I mean? That's what I did. And no, it's been, after that, really, there was no one to advise too much. It was just sort of like, I do now, I have a great relationship with my manager. But no, just applying it and trusting and taking the risks, as we spoke earlier about. That's it.
All right.
I think also kind of what John was just saying with he can't say it wasn't hard work, because it was, but that something that I like to reiterate when I talk to people, and it goes to kind of the whole, almost like encompasses the entire conversation tonight that Dan and everybody else has mentioned, that if you love what you're doing, it doesn't seem like work. It doesn't seem like it was as hard. But then when you look back and realize you were grinding and just like running as fast as you could, as hard as you could, as long as you could, and it just kind of, something magical happened and it came together. And it's, you don't realize until you've suddenly gone, wow, I can't believe I did that you realize how hard it was. And
I would add too, like your talent, I think, will get your foot in the door, and then it's about outworking people. It's about that opportunity. You're so fortunate to get that opportunity. Don't waste it. Like, work as hard as you can.
That's something I teach people when I do art. I volunteer to teach art to high schools and elementary schools in Southern California. But it's one of the things I try to teach them is that the driven student is better than the talented student. Because if you go back to that artist I was talking about, he plateaued. Well, if you're talented, you're basically, most of the time, you're just relying just on your talent.
Yeah.
And so your talent will take you so far. The person who has to work hard and the person who studies and practices and the person who has drive and motivation and doesn't give up, they're going to pass that talented person. And eventually. And so the talent, it's true. It only gets you so far.
All right. Well, thanks everybody for joining us. Everybody watching at home, thank you. Hopefully, like I said, we'll see you either in November or in July 2022 here in San Diego. We had an earlier conversation that I mentioned on Twitch, Lee's Twitch stream. So if you want to see that longer conversation, you can go to twitch.tv/Kohseart, KOHSEART. And with that, thank you guys. This has been fantastic the past couple of weeks talking to you guys about this, and really appreciate it.
Thank you, Johnny. I loved it.
Thank you, Johnny.
Yeah. Thank you guys, and thanks, folks.
Thanks, everybody.